Hello, everybody, and welcome to Spindle TV. Hope everyone is doing well tonight. And I want to thank you for joining me on your Friday night. We didn't get a chance to have a class last night. I had some customers to work with, and I didn't get a chance to kind of get things going until late. So I thought, hey, let's just have one tonight so we could spend a little time and talk about this particular subject, which I am excited about. I like inlays. I love doing inlays. Vectric is making it so much easier for us to be able to do VCarve inlays, and I want to talk about VCarve inlays in general, old versus new methods, and pass along, I don't know, some of what I do, talk about, what other people do, where things used to be and where we are now, and all of that wonderful jazz. So I'm hoping that through it all, we can really lock things down for you, whether you're just getting started or you've been doing this for a while, where it kind of becomes routine, it becomes consistent for you, and it makes things easier when you're wanting to do or add such a beautiful element to your project as an inlay. No matter if it's an inlay of someone's name or some kind of intricate design, we want to be able to knock these things out without over stressing too much about it. I'm going to talk to you a little bit, kind of like the process, start to finish, and we're going to talk about finishes. I am not the greatest at finishing. I'm not a finisher, as far as knowing all the finishes and all the techniques and everything out there in the world. I'm going to focus just on kind of a main few that I work with and that I really have been kind of tried and true. What's the term? Tried and tested, or just what I've done in the past and what's worked, right? So we'll go from there. First of all, big shout out to all of my Spindle TV exclusive members. On Wednesday nights, we do Spindle TV exclusive videos and classes for deep dives into different topics and subjects and things. So if that's ever anything that you're interested in, you're wanting a little bit more contact with me, or behind the scenes, or just a little bit, more in depth on certain topics and discussions and things, think about joining the Spindle TV members, and you can do that by on the page, the main channel. You can click on join and join the Spindle TV exclusive community. But I want a big shout out to all of my exclusive members. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight, and we will do well. So let's see, we've got let me make sure that I'm streaming to everybody. That would be something, huh? Make sure all the chats are working. Let me send a big old shout out here. Hello everyone. Let me make sure the chat's working. For some reason it was acting like it wasn't. But big shout out to Farrier's Woodworking and Dave Heineke, John Thompson, the Hey Brooks Martin, Stephen Main, Keith Kessler, how you doing, bud? Roger S, good to see you. All right, let's see here. What do we got? William Wallace. Hey, William, how you doing, bud? Let's see. And Chuck. Hey, so few hanging out, and let's get this ball rolling. Let's get started. Let me switch over to sharing a screen, and we're going to kind of talk about or focus on. Let's assume that we are working with relatively stock, anything from 3/4 inches up to 2 inches thick, whatever the case may be, like our cutting boards, butcher blocks. Maybe it could be the top of jewelry box lids or whatever this situation. It could be thin cutting boards. It could be anything. It really doesn't matter what the situation is, what the work is you're doing. But what does matter is we want to make sure that we have some depth and we have some definition in our inlays, like our male going into our female part. We want to make sure that we are, let me come over here, we're not dealing with a very shallow inlay or something that could over time, for whatever reason, start to, reveal itself or show up. And again, I'm not the albeit expert and everything, but let's kind of talk. Let's step back a few years and everything, quite a few years where VCarve Inlay really started. You would have seen back in the day that a lot of the VCarve Inlays, when they were just coming out, the instruction manuals and the PDFs and the everything that we found, or when we were researching this stuff, everyone was kind of starting with the 90-degree V-bit, right? That was the V-bit that was of choice, and we would have a 0 start depth and a pocket depth of 0.3 and things like that, and over the years, things have gotten refined. VCarve Inlays have gotten better, and techniques have changed and stuff like that. And now what we're finding, for me, I would never use a 90-degree V-bit in an inlay. It's either, I'm okay with a 60-degree V-bit's all right, but I am more apt to be using a 30-degree V-bit or a 15-degree V-bit. If I were to say that, what would transition from one to the other, let's say that 30-degree V-bit would be, my go-to, and I'm not affiliated with any brands of bits or anything like that. I am affiliated with a Digital Woodcarver, brand of bits and all, but we have 30-degree V-bits, 3-flute. Speed Tool also has 30-degree V-bits, 3-flute. Those two brands, I work with on a regular basis, and have, again, Speed Tool I have no affiliation with. Digital Woodcarver, of course, I have all the affiliation with, but 30-degree is, would be my go-to. But if I have to do a deep inlay, so an inlay that cutting boards, butcher blocks, anywhere where that item is going to get in contact with water, or it's going to be washed all the time, whatever the situation is, right? So it's going to be cleaned and everything. I want depth in that. But also with that depth, comes some challenges and things, and we're going to talk about that as we progress through. And we're going to talk about the nuts and bolts, if you will, of a VCarve inlay and all. But kind of rounding back, we started when things were started, it was kind of that 90-degree. This is how you do it and everything. And then of course that then everybody realized it can be done with any bit, a 90, a 60, what have you. And so 60s for me, when I was first really getting cranking and everything with VCarve Inlays, 60 was my go-to. And then as things progress, and wanting to get more depth and definition, better lines, and just less air gaps, if you will, or whatever the case may be, those angles ended up changing. So right now we are going to be kind of focusing on 30 degree or a 15 degree, 30 degree being the go-to V-bit for inlays, with a 15 degree V-bit being the go-to for deep inlays, anything really over 1/4 of an inch deep, so 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 or, what have you. And mostly on the cutting boards and things like that, I'm going to, the inlays are going to be about a 3/8, 0.375 inches deep. So I want a bit that can get down in there. So you're going to hear me talking about bits or, 30 or 15 degrees and everything. And just like, oh, wait a minute, can I use a 60? I'm used to using a 60 or this or that. Yeah, for sure. No problem. 90, that's kind of, it's going to give you that shallower cut. So it's really not going to give you a whole lot of meat in your inlay. So I'd kind of graduate from that. And I wouldn't go any wider than a 60. And then it would be kind of one of the three, 30, 15, or 60. All right. So without all that confusion, let's kind of talk about the parts of a VCarve inlay, if you will. Let's say that I have a board, and we're going to kind of be looking at a side view here, if you will. And let's say that I'm 5 inches by 1.5 inches. So we'll let's get bigger. Hold on a second. Let's put me down in the corner here. All right. And let's say that for my male part, right, the male part that I'm going to be cutting. Alexa, stop. Alexa's trying to help out there. The male part, whether you're doing end grain, like end grain cutting boards, or you're doing flat grain, whatever the situation, whatever it calls for and all, you're going to have your female where your main pocket is going to be cut, and then you're going to have the male where the protrusion that goes into that pocket is going to be cut. And the material for the female is going to be whatever the thickness of your project material may be, right? But the material for your male, that piece of wood or that piece of in-grain glue up or whatever it is that you're cutting those male parts out that are going to end up ultimately getting glued into the female and milled off and sanded and all that wonderful stuff. We got to start somewhere. And I honestly, 1/2 inch to 5/8 is a good area to kind of be in. 3/4, it's just 3/4 a lot of, there's a little bit of waste, right? There's going to be waste with the male parts anyway, but there's still a little bit more waste and everything, because like I said, most times with my deep inlays, I'm going 3/8 of an inch deep, right? That's my female pocket. On my standard VCarves and everything, it's going to be 0.2 to 0.25. So 1/4 of an inch kind of would be a maximum. 0.2 is always been just my magic number and everything. And that stems, just so you know, that 0.2 stems from when I was using the 60-degree V-bit, the cutting height of the blade of that bit was 0.21, right? So that from the tip to the top of the flute, it had a length of 0.21 inches. And so, up to the shank, the cutting depth was 0.21 inches. And I wanted to make sure that I never exceeded that cut depth of that particular 1/4 inch diameter 60-degree V-bit. So 0.2 was always my cutoff. That's always kind of my magic number. But between 0.2 and 0.25 for my regular everyday inlays, and then 3/8 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, 0.375 for my deep inlays. Okay, so we'll just call it that. But with all of that, the blanks and everything, ½ inch to 5/8 is good. 3/4 is fine too. I'm not saying you have to mill every board down to ½ inch or blah blah blah, but I'm just saying, you know, if you've got it, you know, ½ inch is kind of the smallest I would go on my mel parts. Up to, you know, I wouldn't go too thick. I don't want to too much waste, but 3/4 would be kind of the max, if you will. So that 0.625, 0.6. You know, and I'm gonna give a shout out to Ryan. I think is Ryan over at Cutting It Close. You probably some of you have probably seen his how-to videos and everything. Ryan has got a fabulous story in life. You know, he started in his family's stable, you know, or barn, one of the stalls in the barn and everything with a CNC, small CNC, and now has a multi-million-dollar empire, you know. So big shout out to Ryan. If you're ever watching any of the Cutting It Close videos and everything, take every bit of information Ryan has to offer and just absorb it. It's just good stuff. You know, his pricing strategies, his, you know, when he's talking about chip load and speeds and feeds and inlays or whatever the case may be, Ryan's got it together. I like his input and stuff. But Ryan sells kits, inlay kits of wood. He sells also this, it's not BAM wood. Oh, shoot. Wanted to give a shout out to it. It's BAMX wood, or what have you. It's this layered wood with different color layers and everything. It's really nice. You see a lot of that stuff. You'll see a lot of that in like the games and things, but he provides that and sells those at his CIS, you know, workshop store or whatever online. But, and again, I have no affiliation with Ryan. Don't even know him. We've never even met in person or anything like that. But love his videos. So big shout out to Ryan if he's ever watching. But his blanks, he has a different kind of blanks and everything, ingrain for cutting boards and inlay kits, if you will. And I believe his mells, I think he's right at the 0.6 to 0.625 range, somewhere, you know, on his mel blanks when you're buying the male blanks and the female kits and stuff. And I think his females are 1.25 inches or 1.5 inches. I'm not sure. You know, just the main cutting board, right? And then you can do things like cherry or walnut. He's got different species of wood and stuff. But his male parts, I believe they're coming in at 0.6 or 0.625 or something like that. So, you know, just it's not like an industry standard. It's just a number, right? So if we were looking at the parts, that's what I would say is when you're kind of working your pieces, you got your females, you got your males, anywhere from ½ inch, 5/8, 3/4, somewhere in there. That's going to be your male parts. Let's get past that. Don't need to harp on it too much. Okay. And I talk a lot, but I'm just trying to pass as much information on as I can. So bear with me. All right. So let's say that my male part here will go ½ inch on that. And the let's say that my my pocket, if you will, let's go with a, let me get some guidelines brought down here. We'll just go with kind of a standard inlay for a moment, just for this educational purpose. So let me bring a guideline down to 0.25. That's a negative number. And create that. And then let's say that we'll just kind of do it right here in the middle, somewhere along here. I'm going to be using a 30-degree V-bit. Ho, 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 ho. Almost couldn't find the line tool there for a second. I'm like, what are you doing, Laney? Once you're sitting there trying to draw, Lord of mercy. That's terrible. Let's see here. We're going to go space bar. Let me make sure, because I'm a goofball sometimes. Let me make sure that I'm dealing with a 30-degree included angle here. What are you doing there, bud? What's that? What's that? Stop. Well, why is my angle drawn weird? Hold on a minute. Escape. Don't be a goofball. There we go. Lord of mercy. It was throwing me off there for a second. 330. Come on, dude. Work with me here. $30. All right, let's get rid of that so I don't confuse anybody. All right. So we can get rid of that. Just want to make sure I had my stuff drawn right. And let's come in here. Let me bring that over here. Hold down the control key. Don't fight with me there. Look at that. Should have held the alternate key. Alternate key, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, will keep you on your path. Just a little food for thought. All right, let's take the scissors. Let's trim some of this up here. Whoa! Where are you going there, Hoss? That's where it's going. It's like, hey, you didn't have me down on the line when I trim. All right, let me check the other one because, yep. Snapping threw me off there for a second. I'm trying to draw. I should have the shapes all drawn before class started, but hey, it is what it is. All right, let's, well, you son of a gun. I'm going to hold down the control key and pump that ever so slightly. Wonderful. Fabulous. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I must not be hitting my mark today. Let's see here. Get on there. Come up here. All right. Whew, doggy. Lord of mercy. All right. Now, let's come in here and I'm going to bring this down. And I'm going to get it the full size here. And I'm going to move this up a little bit. So I'm drawing out the two parts. It'll make sense once I have the parts drawn out and everything. But let me get my glue gap in there, if you will. We're going to go with the move tool. And I'm going to make a relative move up 0.02. Wonderful. I'm going to take a line. Let's draw a line across here. And let's move that up. Now, this line is going to represent what's called the surface gap. You'll see when we talk about the parts in just a minute. The surface gap, really, we'll talk about it. It could be kind of any height that you want. I'm going to move this up 0.06. Let's try that again. 0.06. There we go. And from here to here, from here, let's see if I can snap to it this time. Come on there, Hoss. To there. You know, the weirdest thing is I've drawn this rectangle 3 times, and it it keeps moving over to the left and the right. I don't know what the dealio is. Okay, let me take my scissors. Let's do some cleanup. Let's take this and that and that for a minute. Let's move all that up for just a second. And let's do some trimming. Let's go here, here, to there, and there. Okie dokie, tokie dokie. Now, let me join all this stuff together. Join. Closed vector. Make sure that one's also closed. Wonderful. All right. I'm going to take this and hold down the control key, and I'm going to flip that over. So imagine it laying on your table, your CNC cutting and all that wonderful jazz. All right. So now, after all that drawing, you got to see me draw 2 parts that fit together, basically. All right. So you have a mel inlay that has from, imagine with your bit, your V bit. Let me come in here and draw that V bit again. Imagine, if you will, that bit sitting on top of the board, okay? And we have a start depth when we're cutting a mel, and then we have a flat depth, right? And so we have our start depth and we have our flat depth on our mel part. And the same thing, let me move this one over just a little bit. Move that out of the way for just a moment. And the same thing here, we have a start depth and then we have a flat depth. Now, in the new Vectric software, they have come out, I think it was, what, 10.5, 11, 11.5. Which one was it, 12? They just came out 12. They just came out with the VCarve Inlay, I believe, right? It's just new. The VCarve Inlay Toolpath. If we go over and look at the Toolpaths, ooh, let's move this line out of the way, so we'll come back to him in just a minute. Let's move him to a new layer and hide that for just a second. All right, so we have a new VCarve Inlay Toolpath, right? But before the VCarve Inlay Toolpath, we had the VCarve Toolpath, right? The original VCarve Toolpath. And when we were creating our female part and our male part, we were working with, you know, a start depth and a flat depth. Now, I want to kind of go old school with you for a minute, so that way when we talk about new school, it kind of it's that graduation into, you know, how much easier things have gotten and stuff. So for me, like I said, back in the day, my female pockets 0.2 was the cutoff, right? So that would have been the flat depth, 0.2. And what that represented was, you know, when my bit was zeroed out on the top of the material or wherever, when I go to cut my start depth, starting at 0 and cutting down to my flat depth, flattening everything off, that V cut was 0.2 inches. So this depth here was 0.2, okay, for the female pocket. Well, now that can range depending on if I'm using, a regular inlay or a deep inlay. For me, it's going to range from 0.2, 0.25 has become a good number for me now as well too, and then 0.375, 3/8 for deep inlays. Anything that's going to have water contact or whatever the case may be. Cutting boards and stuff like that. So 375. So that would have been the flat depth, the female pocket depth, right? So we have our flat depth and start depth. Start depth of 0, flat depth of, let's go just 0.2 for right now. And when it came to cutting the male parts, for this, we had a start depth and then we had a flat depth. And the two numbers combined together had to total the female pocket depth. So let's say, just as an example, wouldn't do this, but let's say that our start depth was 0.1 and our flat depth was 0.1. That 0.1 plus 0.1 equaled 0.2, right? But the flat depth, this number was always a smaller number because this kind of represented the glue gap, if you will, and the not true. It didn't really represent the glue gap. It represented a combination of things. So it represented when that pocket was fully seated, when that male was fully seated in the pocket, the bottom of the male part, which would be this part that's upside down right now, all the way to the surface gap, the gap, the total depth right there, that was, kind of determined by our flat depth. But everything had to, had to total our female pocket. So let's say, for instance, that my start depth was 0.18. That would mean that my flat depth back in the day was 0.02. 0.18 plus 0.02 totals 0.2, my female pocket depth, so on and so forth. So we always had, one way or another, it didn't matter what the numbers were. The smaller the flat depth, the tighter the glue gap was, if you will, and we the numbers we could play with. And I started out back in the day with a 1 and 1, 0.1 and 0.1, and that always left big old air gaps and everything. And then eventually, for me, I always landed on, this is what I landed on, 0.18 and 0.02, but I also 0.17 and 0.03, right? Whatever the combination was, it always equaled that 0.2. Like I said, that was my go-to number for years, right? For the longest time. So this was my combination. What this is, let's move this V bit out of the way. And let's bring this male part back in here and everything. And when these two parts came together and our sidewalls made contact with one another, you have basically kind of, you have three things that you're looking at. Number one is the space between the bottom of the male and the bottom of the female pocket, that kind of air gap. That was a glue gap. It's not an air gap. I shouldn't say the word air gap. It's a glue gap. It's space for glue. And some people can balk and say, you need more glue gap and things like that. But what can happen is if it's a big span, the inlay is a big span or something, it can cause your inlay to be hollow. There's no support underneath it. If the glue gap is too big and the glue shrinks, as it congeals and gets hardened and all that stuff, it can leave voids and everything. So we want to tighten up that glue gap, minimize it, if you will. And we do that by, for me, for a glue gap, it's, 0.02 is kind of the magic number, a half a millimeter. right? You know, for the glue gap. But let's label the parts here so we know the parts and what we're talking about with an inlay. I'm probably sounding confusing here. All right, so let's go glue gap. Let's make our text an appropriate. Let's make our text an appropriate size. Glue gap. Let's go 0.25 and pop that. Oh, you booger. Let's go. All right. So glue gap was represented or represents that space there. Then we have what's called our surface gap. So the surface gap, that can really be surface gap. That can really be anything, you know, any size that you want. You don't want too big of a surface gap, but let me draw the arrow here. And that is kind of this space, if you will. And let's do this. Move to layer, new layer. We'll call this text. And let's make it a color everybody can see, hopefully. Oh, that's terrible. Terrible, Andy. Who are you, bud? Can y'all see that? Can y'all see that orange number? I just wanted it to be a little bit different. I wanted to stand out from the black. So the surface gap, let's talk about that for a second. So if I have my two parts, okay, and let's for just a second switch here. If I have my male and my female part, you know, and they're going to fit together, the gap when they're pressed and they're clamped together, that gap, that space, typically, if I was taking this project over to my bandsaw, and I'm going to have my bandsaw cut the male excess waste loose so I can sand all the rest into the inlay, you know, I would probably have my surface gap, you know, wide enough that my saw blade can fit in between, you know, my bandsaw blade or handsaw blade or something. I might have that surface gap. A lot of times, which I'm a big advocate of, is, you know, clamping it on your CNC and then having the CNC mill that away. And so with that, really the surface gap can kind of be anything that you want. There are, you know, some people have certain numbers that they kind of shoot for and stuff. Ryan over at Cutting It Close, he likes a surface gap of, Ryan, what do you like your surface gaps at, boy? 0.1. He likes a surface gap of 0.1 between his inlays, just because that's his number, right? And so for me, I like, I'm not using a bandsaw. I do not have to worry about the thickness of my blade or anything like that. I'm not using a scroll saw to cut the parts. You know, I'm using my CNC. So I like a surface gap of 0.06 or 1/16 of an inch, you know, whatever the case may be, but 0.06, roughly, you know, about 2 millimeters, you know, 0.06. What is 2 millimeters nowadays? Nowadays, it never changes. Hold on a second. That's 0.07. So, you know, 2 millimeters or, you know, somewhere around there. So, but a 1/16. Let's talk English. Let's talk imperial and all. A 1/16 of an inch, 0.06, 0.0625. whatever my fingers want to type, but that's where I'm at, and that's good for me, right? There's no right or wrong on that surface gap space. The only thing, and literally that surface gap can be as wide as you want it to be. When those two parts fit together and they're completely compressed together, they can't go any more. That space between the male part, bottom, if you will, and the female's top part, that air gap, that surface gap is what it's referred to as. Whatever number floats your boat that allows you to do what you want to do when you're getting ready to separate the two parts, and not separate like take it and glue it, but separate like cutting the waste off with a mill. And I used to use my bandsaw to separate the parts and all, but I'm a big advocate now of clamping that board back on the table and surfacing off that waste and everything. Just for me, it's just much faster and easier and everything. So whatever gets the job done, right? And what you're doing is you're separating the two parts, so that way, and you're leaving a little bit proud, right? A little bit of that male proud that you can sand flush to a perfect, beautiful finish and all that stuff, right? So we have our glue gap and our surface gap, right? That's two of the three terms and everything. And then you have your plug depth. I believe in the VCarve Inlay, they don't really specify plug depth. They call it just pocket depth because they're focusing on the female pocket, right? But that the plug depth here is kind of how thick that male part is going down into that female, and we'll just call it plug height, plug thickness, plug. Can I just call it plug? Plug depth. We'll just call it plug depth. All right, and so plug depth is referring to that part there. So how much of that plug is fitting into the inlay when all this is milled off, sanded, flush, and all that plug depth. So that's kind of our three, main areas. Well, plug depth really isn't in the new VCarve Inlay. Plug depth isn't specified. It's kind of it's one of those numbers that automatically kind of gets generated based on the depth of your female pocket, how much of a glue gap you want, and how much of a surface gap you want, right? So Vetric in the new VCarve Inlay Toolpath asked for those three numbers, right? How much of a pocket depth do you want for your female pocket? For me, that would be 0.2 in this situation, right? How much of a glue gap do you want when the two parts fit together? For me, that'd be 0.02. And how much of a surface gap do you want? For me, that is 0.06 or 0.0625, either one, right? And then what bit are you using, right? So the whether it be a 60-degree V-bit, 30-degree V-bit, 15-degree V-bit, whatever your choice is. Now, this is I just installed the 12.5. I see. Let's go. I got my 45 in there. Got to upload my tool database. Has anybody, show of hands, how many of you transitioned over to 12.5 yet? How many of you transitioned over to 12.5? I'm liking it. 3 flute. All right, 18,000 RPM, 75 and 30 is good. Okay. All right. And so the now for this, right? For this part here, the tool, your main V bit is going to be your what's doing your female pocket and everything, and also there's a clearance tool as well too, depending on the inlay. Now, for a clearance tool, we want to try to get in there, into the areas and clear out as much as we can. So while yes, we could use a 1/4 inch end mill, it's a little bit too big for the situation. I use an 1/8 inch end mill. An 1/8 inch end mill is going to be fine. For me, for that's my kind of my go-to. I'm referring back to Ryan because I like his work and stuff. But Ryan is a 3/16. Ryan likes he has what he calls his happy medium, right? He feels an 1/8 inch might be a little bit slower for him. The 1/4 inch not going to get into there and get the detail like he would want. So a 3/16 inch end mill is kind of his go-to, right? And it's whatever Ryan's over the years he's figured out what's worked for him, and that's his numbers and all. For me, my clearance tool is an 1/8 inch end mill, and I love my my speed tool bits. Speed tool. I like the extra long 1 inch cutting flute, 1/4 inch shank, extra long, meaning it's not a 1/2 inch cutting flute, it's a 1 inch from Speed Tool. I really like their tools, and Digital Woodcarver has a 1/4 inch shank, 1 inch cutting flute, 1/8 inch end mill as well too. Both of them, they're 2 flute end mills, and I have them in upcut, downcut, and compression cut, bits and all. But for me, the 1/8 inch bit is kind of my go-to. 3/16 for Ryan, that's a good one. It's an oddball one, but it's a good one. And a 1/4 inch in this case, when it comes to VCarve inlays, is just it fine for larger areas and stuff like that. And we can, for our clearance tools, if we wanted to, we can add more than one tool in here, right? But there's not really a whole need to have an entire list of tools in all. We just need one V-bit, one end mill to do the work. For me, it's my 30 and my 1/8 inch, or my 15 and my 1/8 inch, depending on if I'm doing a deep inlay or not, right? And so the plug destination sheet, we would set up another sheet for the plug destination, so that way it's not on the same sheet. And I don't have a second sheet made up. I hadn't made up one yet. We'll talk about that in just a minute. We'll do that in a second before we calculate this toolpath. And then the outer boundary for the male part is what creates the male part in a VCarve inlay. So we have our design, which we haven't even talked about designs yet. We're going to do that in just a minute. We're actually going to lay out a design and do a toolpath. But the male part gets mirrored, so it's like 2 pieces of bread, sandwiching together. And and I'll switch the screen back to a bigger screen in just a second. But the male part fits into the female, so it gets mirrored, flipped and mirrored, right? And it gets a boundary put around it so that the VCarve toolpath cuts between that boundary line and the vector lines, creating that male part, right? And so let's actually go big here. And, in that new style inlay, those 3 numbers, 0.2 pocket depth, that's how deep my female pocket is in this case. My glue gap, 0.02, my surface gap, 0.062. And that's, it's routine. There's no need for me to vary. The only time I vary is when I am going to a 3/8 inch deep cut, or maybe I, for whatever reason, I want, you know, it's a little bit of an more intricate design or something, and I want a little bit more meat in there, I'll go to a 0.25, right? So I only have certain variables mentally, you know, not mentally insane, but I only have certain reasons why I would change from one reason to another. Deep inlays, 0.375. There's no other number. 375 is my pocket depth. But on my regular inlays, 0.2 is kind of my go-to. It's always been mentally my go-to, but 0.25, if I want a little bit more meat in there, that's my secondary. That's my backup number, right? So very little reason, you know, to change. So that way it becomes just, it's routine. It's just knocking them out kind of thing. It doesn't matter if you're inlaying text or inlaying a NASCAR scene on a piece of wood, whatever the case may be, right? It doesn't matter what you got going on. It's the same. You know, it doesn't change. So let's not make it overly complicated. Now, here's the thing I want to talk about before we get into actually making the design. I want to kind of we know our three areas here: our plug depth, how much of the plug is going into that female pocket when it's maxed out, when it's clamped in there and it's maxed down. The space that's left over, that is our glue gap, right? And then when it's maxed and everything, the space between the top of our female piece and the bottom, if you will, of our male part, that's our surface gap, right? We know those terms. That's our names. That's where we're at, right? But let's come back over here and let's talk about the male for a moment. And let's talk about how this toolpath acts. And let's get out of this VCarve Inlay and let's go back to the old school method here. And let's talk about start depth and flat depth. I'm going to take you back even to a VCarve toolpath, much less inlay. Start depth and flat depth, okay? Start depth on any toolpath, not just the VCarve toolpath. Vectric is going to assume that there's no material there, right? So let's pretend that this material is still here. Okay, let's we'll just pretend that that's right. That's our surface, if you will, of our board, right? That's 0. We're starting at 0. Well, if I set a start depth of 3/16, just as an example, Vectric is assuming that that first 3/16 from the top of the board down 3/16, that there's no material there, right? So, I mean, it's plunging that bit. And when I tell a VCarve toolpath, or really any toolpath, we'll just focus on the VCarve right now. But if I say that I am going to go 0.18, we'll get rid of the 7.5, 0.18 here and 0.02 here for my flat depth, that is a total of 0.2, right? Same as my female pocket, right? So understand what's going to happen here. Vectric is going to assume that 0.18, that there's no material there, right? So it's plunging down to there, but it's cutting, it's doing it one pass all the way down to that 0.2, okay? It is just starting at 0.18, and my flat depth is 0.02, so it's going down that additional 0.02, and it's making that cut, right? So in one pass. Now, if I have a deeper inlay, 3/8 of an inch, 0.375, and I say that my, I say that I go a flat depth of 0.373. Let's try that again. 0.38. There you go. That's Laney, come on. Lord have mercy. Hold on a second. 0.355. 0.355 plus 0.020 is 0.375. Thank you very much. Took me a minute to get that math out of my head. Let's say that my start depth is 0.355, which I would never do, by the way. I'd have to break this toolpath up into maybe 2 or 3 toolpaths. But VCarve is cutting the full 3/8 of an inch in that single pass. It's assuming that 0.355 of material from zero, the top of the board, is gone. There's nothing there, right? So it's assuming that we are telling the bit has to start down in this pocket area in carve. Well, the wood is still there. We haven't milled anything away, right? So the wood's still there. So our bit is plunging 0.375, and it's removing all that material for that mill cut, in one pass. You're going to break something, right? You're going to break the bit. You're going to break your machine, depending on what you got, and things like that. Some machines aren't, rigid or strong enough to handle that kind of load. And definitely some bits are not, kind of thing. So you got to be mindful of your, your depth and your start depths and your finish depths and everything, and, whatever's appropriate for your machine. So if I, had to do a 0.375 cut, because I'm using, I'm doing a deep inlay and everything, I'm probably going to break that up into 2 or 3 toolpaths. I may have one toolpath that has a start depth of 1/8 of an inch. Let's break it up a little bit. Let's say my start depth is 0.0625, and I'm going down to 0.1. My flat depth is always going to be kind of that 0.02. And so I'm going to have my start depth for that first pass, if you will. I might have it at 0.0625 with a flat depth of 0.02. My bit is going to be cutting down to that 0.0645, right? And it's going to, remove all that material, thinking that that's the inlay. That's going to be pass number 1. Now I have now removed, if you will, 0.0645 of material. Let's round it up, 0.065 of material, right? I've already removed that. So my second pass, my second tool path that I would make, I would probably, have that one start at 0.08 and go 0.02. And so now I'm removing that next level of material, and I'm continuing those passes, whatever they are, and all until at the very end, I have removed. My final pass is the 0.375, that depth, that final depth, if you will, when these numbers are added together, and the and by the way, I wouldn't type in 0.08 here on the start depth. I've already removed 0.0645, right? So it would be 0.08 plus 0.0645 plus, let's say I want to go another, 0.02 or whatever. Right. So I've already removed that. Now I want to, I'm starting again, and I'm just stepping my way down. That number could be bigger. I could go 0.125 and everything. My bit can handle that kind of pass. But long story short, I'm going to break this up to where I'm doing it in 3 passes at the most, 2 to 3 passes. 3 passes is a good number. But I'm going to make sure that when it's all said and done, from one pass, let's say that one pass is removing, come on now, this much material. And then my next pass is, let's say, removing this much material, and then my final pass is removing this much material, whatever the case may be, I'm going to break this down into 3 passes. And I usually try to do even numbers, right? So it kind of, 1, 2, and 3. I usually try to even it out if I can, whatever the case may be. But don't, long story short is, don't do deep inlays in 1 pass. It's too aggressive. It's too aggressive, right? So break it up a little bit and everything. I don't want to focus on too much on this because I want to focus on doing a regular inlay versus a deep inlay. There's beautiful videos out there online. Lots of creators and all. Stefan Brooks Martin might have to help me out with his name again, but Stefan, he has a great video on deep inlays. His thumbnail looks like a little YouTube button and all, but he's got a great video, a nice breakdown on the math and stuff like that for deep inlays and all. I'll let him show you that, right? I just want to focus on regular inlays right now, VCarve inlays and mastering those. But long story short, the whole point of the reason why I'm bringing this up is do not do deep inlays in 1 pass. Break it up, right? Break it up. Now, my regular inlay, my 0.2 deep inlay with a start depth of 0.18 and a flat depth of 0.02, that I can do in 1 pass because I can do up to 0.25 inches deep with my 30-degree V-bit. I'm doing a 1/4 inch, pass on there and everything on that VCarve inlay, and I'm going to have a clearance bit, an 1/8 inch end mill, doing a lot of the clearance. So the 1/8 inch end mill is removing a lot of the material, clearing it away, and so my V-bit really isn't doing a whole. It's not a whole lot of stress or anything on it, but I'm doing it in 1 pass. When I get to that 3/8 of an inch, that deep inlay, I'm not doing that in 1 pass. I'm going to break that one up into like 2 or 3 tool pass, and everything. So that's the whole point I'm trying to make is know that if I set a start depth of 0.18 and a flat depth of 0.02, Vectric is assuming that 0.18 of material is gone, which it's not. So the bit is plunging down that deep and everything, and it's cutting down to the 0.2, right? It thinks it's starting at 0.18 and just cutting 0.2, or 0.02 after that, and it's doing the full cut in 1 pass. But when we have a clearance tool, that 1/8 inch bit is going to go in and remove a lot of that material. It's still doing the same thing. It's still doing the 0.2 depth of cut, all in 1 pass or 2 passes, depending on what you have your bit set for, your clearance tool set for. I'm taking that in 1 pass, but that's clearing away, and then my V-bit is doing 1 pass as well. So it's 1 pass and 1 pass, and everything. Your CNC might not be able to handle that, or it might be able to. Who knows? Whatever. Do whatever is best for your machine. So in this case, for me, my plug depth is 0.2. My female, not my plug depth. 0.2 is my female pocket depth, and my glue gap is 0.02, so 1/2 millimeter, 0.02. And my surface gap for me is 0.06. That's my surface gap. Like I said, that can be whatever width. You might want it a certain thickness because you need to get a blade through it or whatever the case may be. So, show of hands. How many of you are still with me on this? How many of you are following along and kind of getting it? And with this breakdown here, let's move that part up and all. The 3 numbers, and now, like I said, the new VCarve Inlay in version 12 and 12.5 makes it so much easier. You only have to just plug in the numbers. It does all the rest and all that stuff for you. But do you get it? Do you understand? Do I need to break it down a little bit more? Let me know. Because what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of transition over into the design. I'd like to make the design. And again, the design can be anything, right? It could be text. It could be a flourish, a beautiful flourish. It could be a deer scene. It could be this, whatever, right? Anything, Swan Lake, whatever the case may be. For today, we're on this particular board. By the way, let's talk about our board setup here. I got to set up my sheets properly. So for this sheet here, we got an 18-inch by 12-inch by 1.5 inches. It's a single-sided project. I'm going to be touching off on the material surface. And I like to start at the bottom left corner for my XY datum. Doesn't matter really where you start. But for me, XY datum is bottom left corner. And that is the setup for sheet number 1. And then sheet number 2, this is going to be, let's rename sheet number 1 to female pocket. And sheet 2, male plug, we'll call it that. Now, the male plug, I do not need, let's go in here and edit and everything. I do not need to have an 1.5 inch piece of wood. Like I said, from 1/2 inch to 5/8, somewhere in that range, that's the male part. In this particular case, I mean, I'm not going to have a whole lot of backer board and everything, but I'm only going 0.2 inches deep. So I could actually get away and cut this part out of a 3/8 inch piece of wood, right? And things like that. I like to give myself a little bit of sturdiness and stuff, especially on ingrain. Too thin, it starts getting a little warpy and all that stuff. So for my male part, my male plug part, we'll go with a 1/2 inch piece of material. And I don't need it to be 18 by 12. I'm going to just click OK for a minute and let's look at the female. Let's come back over here and look at this and imagine virtually, if you will, that I had a rectangle kind of representing kind of a perimeter. Right? Okay, let's pretend that that's my perimeter right there and everything. That part is just a 10 by 10, right? A 10 by 10 male piece of wood would be enough to create my plug, my inlay, right? So it doesn't need to be, we don't need to waste, an 18-inch sheet or anything like that. We can use that for more than, for more than one part. I mean, if I was doing an 18-inch sheet, then I'm going to, for the male part, I'm going to be over here so I can get something else out of the rest of the wood, right? I'm not going to have it dead center, kind of thing. I'm going to try to get I'm going to try to use as much as this wood I can, for my male parts, if I was using a blank this size, right? If I'm making my blanks for this particular job or whatever, I'm just going to make it to the size that I need it, for the project. And in this case, I mean, a 10 by 10, let's call it 10 by 10 or 10 1/4 by 10 1/4, whatever, that's all I need for the male part. So let's just, for difference sake on this, let's edit this and let's make it, we'll go 10.5 by 10.5. We'll just make it square, 10.5, just as an example, right? 10 by 10 is fine, but we'll go 10.5 by 10.5. All right, so that's my male plug right there, that blank board. All right, let's come over here and let's get rid of this. Now, if I'm doing old school VCarve Inlay, right? I'm going to take the male and I'm going to, not the male, I'm going to take the subject or the, the design, and I'm going to have that design laid out in size, how I want, for the cut and everything. And then I'm going to copy that to the male plug sheet. And on the male plug sheet, we'll get that centered. It's going to get mirrored, right? It's going to get flipped. So I'm going to come in here to the mirror tool, and I'm going to flip it about job center and flip it horizontally. I'm going to mirror that. And I'm going to put a boundary around it, right? And in this case, I would probably make my boundary slightly bigger than my board so it cleans off all the edges. Otherwise, I would have to take it over to a bandsaw or something and clean up the edges before I try to glue it together, because I'll have a little lip around there. So I want the bit to go right past to clean up those edges for me. So my male part is going to be mirrored, and I'm going to draw a boundary around it. And now I have the vectors I need to create both parts. Okay. So old school, let's start with the female pocket. Old school method for this particular cut. My start depth is going to be 0 for the female. My flat depth is going to be 0.2. Okay, 0.2. And again, it could be 0.2, 0.25, 0.375, again, depending on what type of inlay you're doing, whatever number you want it to be, really, right? I'm going to be using my 30-degree V-bit and my 1/8 inch end mill. I'm going to, we'll do an offset so it can clear in there pretty quickly, because it's clearing inside of this part and all. And this is going to be my female pocket. And we're going to calculate that toolpath, right? And it's going to generate the 2 toolpaths. We're going to have the female pocket clearing tool, that 1/8 inch end mill, which is going to go in and clear away all of that flat area. Let's turn off the color for a moment. So it's going to go in there and clear all of that away. And then we're going to have the female V-bit cut that's going to come in and finish that off and create that female area. And if we were to fill this in, that's what the inlay is going to look like. Pretend, if you will, that, that's your inlay or whatever, but that's what it's going to, look like. All right. Another cool way of doing it in the version 12.5 and everything is I could come in here and let's say that I go, we'll go cherry, right? And then on the surface color, we'll make the surface color kind of a, we'll go with a kind of a maple-ish tan, if you will, right? Kind of can get the effect, somewhat of, what my dark inlay would look like. I don't have my custom woods in here, my walnuts and stuff. The walnut in Vectric by default looks like bird's eye maple. It doesn't even look like walnut. But let's see here. Let's go with a dark oak. Right, so use your imagination. This would be your lighter wood, and then you can have your darker inlay, or vice versa. You could, have your darker wood, lighter inlay. Either one, but that's kind of, what we would be, looking at, right? That kind of situation. So that is my female. Now switch over to the male board, and we select the border and the reversed design. And for that toolpath, we are going to have a start depth. For me, it's 0.18 and a flat depth 0.02. 30-degree V-bit, 1/4-inch end mill. This is going to be my mel plug. And we're going to calculate that toolpath. And the end mill is going to go in and remove all of that excess material. Okay. And then the V-bit is going to come do all of that V work for the angled edges and all that are going to be fitting into that that female part. So this will be the male plug here. And so now that is my two tool paths. I have my female pocket and V-bit, and I have my male pocket and V-bit. That's my two tool paths for the inlay, right? Now let's look at the new school method of using the actual VCarve Inlay toolpath. So let me group these together really quickly. We'll group that one. This will be my old school male plug. Let's switch over to this. This will be my old school female pocket. Let's minimize those two things there. And let's turn off the visibility of them right now. Now let's go into the VCarve toolpath. And I'm going to, for this one, I'm going to create another sheet. So I'm going to call this mel plug. I'm going to rename this mel plug old school. Right. So we'll call that. And then I'm going to create a new sheet. And I'm going to call it mel plug new school. Old school and new school. All right, we'll just call it that. All right, so now when we use the new VCarve Inlay toolpath, Vectric has literally done everything for us. All we have to do is lay out our design and select the vector, come over here and provide our three numbers. So for me, once again, my pocket depth is for the female pocket is 0.02. Glue gap 0.02. Surface gap 0.06. I'll just 0.625. 0.0625. There you go. And I'm going to be using the 30-degree V-bit. Now, come down here. I'm also going to be using the 1/8 inch end mill. I'm going to plug destination sheet. I'm going to choose the new school sheet. And the plug outer boundaries, I can use the sheet limit as the boundary. And I can create a boundary offset, which is the same as kind of like that vector I did. Past the boundary, or I can just say a certain offset from this vector, from this design, right? Like let's say I could go, just go 0.3 out from that design and that'll be it. But in that case, if I did that, then if I did the vector offset, then I would have to cut away all the waste because I'd have those lips there. I wouldn't be able to get the two parts to fit together. I need to be flat around that design, right? So vector offset's not going to be the option I would want to choose. It's sheet limit. So my little 10¼ by 10¼ sheet, I want to use that boundary, but I want to go past the boundary. I want to clean up the edge a little bit. Now, when we're doing a boundary offset, a negative number allows us to go over the line. A positive number brings us in from the line, right? So I'm going to go just a 1/16 of an inch past the boundary, and it's going to be a negative number. So this way, when I calculate the toolpath, and of course, give me just a second here. What? It's, come on, Vetric. That's ridiculous. It's wanting me to increase my glue gap. It thinks my glue gap is insufficient. That's okay. That's where old school comes in and beats new school. All right. It wanted me to use a 0.05 glue gap and everything. That's crazy. Anyhow, real quick, I want to go back. Let me turn this off for a second. And I want to look at here really quickly. Let's turn this off and turn this on. And I just told you a negative number puts you over the line. A positive number brings you in from the line, because that is true with all things pocket, profile cut, everything except for 3D model cuts and everything. But yet that is not true for the VCarve Inlay. It's a positive number for the to go over the boundary, and a negative number to be away from it. So by putting the negative number in, I shrunk my give me just a second. By putting the negative number in, I shrunk the boundary, and it's carving inside the line instead of outside of the line. So that was not the result that I wanted and everything. So let's go back in and fix that. And what I love about this is what I think is just funny as albeit is the toolpath is bringing me into the old school regular VCarve Inlay. That's hilarious. All right, let me go through and delete those. That's crazy. Delete that. All right, let's do that again. So the VCarve Inlay didn't accept my 0.02 glue gap. It wanted me to do a glue gap of 0.05. Now, 0.05 in 0.05, 0.05. I mean, that's a 1.27 millimeter, glue gap. I like a 1 millimeter glue gap and all that stuff. So no, that should be VCarve. 0.02 is my glue gap. Anyhow, coming back here, I'm going to take away this minus sign this negative sign. We were on a roll up until it made me out to be wrong. We're going to go with a positive number of 0.0625. And we'll calculate that. Well, first of all, make sure everything is still right. Female plug destination is going to be the male new school. And it's crazy that I got to delete all that. Start with the blank. So sometimes newer isn't better, right? Let's see here. So this is going to be the male new school pocket, 0.02, 0.0625. Quit running me up. That's all right. It's okay. Sheet, make this a positive number. I got to go in and change my options because it's rounding me to, you know, the okay. Now, just because the warning comes up about an insignificant glue gap doesn't mean it's not going to calculate the toolpath and everything. It's just it's saying that, you know, your glue gap isn't big enough, and I don't know what they're basing that information off of for themselves, or why they picked that particular number, or what calculation per bit and per angle and per depth and per, it said there, if you think that's not insufficient, try a shallower pocket depth and all that stuff, right? So there's some kind of algorithm that it's using, but it's still calculated the toolpath and everything. So looking at the mel plug here, let me see if it calculated that toolpath correctly. There's my line, and it is going outward. That's wonderful. So a positive number, not a negative number. And that's going to create that mel part. There we go. All right, and then of course on the other main sheet we will have the female part, right? So in this particular instance, unlike the pocket cut and profile cut and other cuts and everything, except for 3D model cuts, negative offset allowance, boundary offset, negative allowance takes you away from, in my case, the edge. Positive over. Well, in a profile cut or a pocket cut, it's a negative number that takes me over the line, and a positive number that takes me away from it, right? So it is what it is. As confusing as that may be, but it's just how their software, how it works, right? It is what it is. And just if I were doing a pocket cut on this, which I wouldn't normally do a pocket cut, but let's just pretend for a minute. And I said on my pocket cut that I'm doing a boundary or a pocket allowance of negative 0.06, whatever. When I calculate that toolpath and we go and look at it in a solid view, I'm cutting over that line by that 0.06, right? If in that pocket toolpath I said a positive number, then I'm cutting away from the line, right? So in my pockets and my profile cuts, the negative number takes me over the line and a positive brings me away from it. I would love, it would have made sense that I wanted to go over the edge of my board, so it would be a negative number. I'm going over the line, right, over the edge of that boundary. But in this case, the negative number actually kept me away from the boundary. So it is what it is. Can't help it. Can't do nothing about it. All right. Now, let's talk about a couple of things. Number one, wood. A lot of times, ingrain, like ingrain cutting boards and all, you'll get a lot of good results with ingrain cutting boards and everything because of the way the grain is. You know, the grain is vertical and everything, which when you're cutting those deep cuts and everything, it's going to be much more, much less prone to chip out and tear out and stuff like that when cutting and everything. And it is also at the same time, it's going to soak up some glue. So, you know, ingrain is very notorious for soaking up glue and everything. So you want to make sure you have plenty of glue and all in. When you clamp together, it'll, you know, a lot of that, you'll get your glue squeeze out and stuff. Don't go too crazy excessive and all that and everything, but you want to make sure that you got a good hold. I really encourage you to, if you've never tried it, to try the 30-degree V-bit. Let's see here. Oh, let's see. Speed Tool 30 DEG V-bit. If you want, I will include a link in the chat. Now, this would be an affiliate link, meaning if you did purchase it, I would get possibly get a small commission off of it and everything, so it helps the channel out and all that stuff. But there's a link for 4-flute, sorry, 30-degree quarter-inch V-bit, and it has Speed Tool has, they have, you know, I like their selection of tools. Digital Wood Carver also has a big shout out to Digital Wood Carver. I'll give you that link as well too. digitalwoodcarver.com. It's going to be a little bit different price, a little bit more. The Digital Wood Carver, we have a V-bit set, if you will, but the 3-flute 30-degree V-bit, that one's also a good one as well too. Either one, you know, just throwing that out there. I do not get a commission on that one. But $18.25, so it's $4 difference in price. But Speed Tool, I'm a big, I'm you know, I'm a fan and everything, and all. So the and then as far as a 15-degree V-bit, I don't have any. Speed Tool doesn't have a 15-degree V-bit. The ones that I use, give me just a second. I'll pull up the one that I use. Oh, do 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 do. It is this one right here. It's a 3-piece set. I don't know. Can y'all see that? Let me make sure I can. That's up on the screen. Yeah, it's a 3-piece set, and it has about a 1.2 inch cutting height and everything. It does have a 0.03 millimeter flat tip on it, but doesn't matter. Put it in as a 15-degree V-bit in your tool database and everything. But it has a 1.02 1 inch cutting length there and everything. But for your deep inlays, I haven't never had any problems with it. It's a decent tool, and it's a 3-piece set for $14. You know, can't go wrong with it. I have no affiliation with this company or any of that stuff. The bits and everything, but it is. I like my white side SC50. For my 22-degree V-bit, I love it. Little carving liner and everything. For my 30-degree V-bits, I like either the speed tool or the digital wood carver. And then, having to track down and find a 15-degree V-bit, I went with what, was affordable, right? And in 3 packs for $14, can't beat it, right? And it's typically 15. I think I'm in my business account, so I think it's there's a little bit of a business discount, business price, but it's about $15, $14.79, $15, and all. Long story short, it's just a recommendation. If you want, I'll put the link to that there too. What do you have? Who's this, Brooks Martin? Speed Tool 15D18. Let me see what you got going on here, Brooks. Number RO.125-D1/8. Is that the tool number? Don't tell me now that Speed Tool has a 15 and I don't know about it. Hold on now. Speed Tool. Got to change up my game here. Let's see here. Speed Tool number R0.25-15-D1/8. Is that an actual number? Let's find out. Don't get my hopes up like that, Brooks. All right, let's just type in. Hold on. Don't get my hopes up like that and disappoint me like that. Hold on a second. Let's see here. Let's just type in Speed Tool 15-degree V-bit. That's a 20-degree. There's my 30. All right, I might have to go to their website. Amazon might not carry it. Speedtools.com. Speedtools.com. Don't get my hopes up, Brooks. All right, hold on a second. What are you looking for? What am I looking for? I'm looking for a 15-degree V-bit. That's what I'm looking for. 45, 30, 60, 20. Yeah. Okay. Well, you might have to email me a link or something, Brooks. I was about to get excited, man. I'm still excited if there's one out there somewhere, but I'll have to stick to my little 3-pack and all. All right. Can you use a 60? William Wallace, absolutely you can use a 60-degree V-bit. Nothing wrong with it at all. I mean, I used 60-degree V-bit for years. I just like now, I'm using a 30 or a 15 to get more depth, that more, depth, more inlay into my, being able to get, more meat. If I have a 0.2 pocket depth, female pocket depth, and I'm using a 60-degree V-bit, in some of my smaller parts, the smaller, finer details and all, they're not going to be really thick, as far as in the pockets and everything. I'm not going to have, a whole lot of meat and everything and depth. I can't go really too deep and stuff like that. But when I want to go like a 1/4 of an inch or whatever the case may be. But a 60 is great. Nothing wrong with it. With those numbers, it works well. 30 and 15 is just a recommendation. There's not written in stone. I will, Brooks. I certainly will. Thank you. But you can absolutely, William Wallace, absolutely use the 60. I wouldn't. I honestly, I think for me, 90-degree V-bit is off the table when it comes to VCarve Inlays. Even though that's kind of where it started. People, they were using their 90s to, one of the main first PDFs ever written about whoever invented the VCarve, inlay procedure, right? Someone figured it out and came up with it and all. I believe it was written based on a 90-degree V-bit, right? So, but times have changed. So 30 and 15 is just recommendations. 15 definitely got to get that depth in there and everything. So let's now. We've talked about the 3 parts of a VCarve inlay: your female pocket, your surface gap, that's the space between where when your male and female parts are together. It's the space between the top of your female board and the bottom, if you will, kind of that flat depth of the male board, when it's turned upside down. That's the glue or the surface gap. And then when the 2 parts are completely fit together, that is your glue gap, right? That little space that's left under here, that's your glue gap at all. And then how far the male fits into the female is typically referred to as a plug depth, but the new VCarve inlay doesn't ask for a plug depth. It asks for the pocket depth, the surface gap, and the glue gap, right? Those 3 numbers, and it'll calculate the Toolpaths for you, making life, easier. Yeah, it threw up a warning on me saying that, the 0.02 glue gap is not sufficient, blah, 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 but it still calculates the toolpath. If it would have stopped from calculating the toolpath, that would have kind of thrown me for a loop. That would have, I would have to just stick with my old school ways in the regular VCarve toolpath, right? But now let's talk real quick. Let's kind of wrap it up here in the last 15 minutes. And let's talk about finish. Okay. Let's talk about finish. Now, if you're doing cutting boards or anything like that, inlays with anything that's there where there's going to be food contact, we want to make sure that we have a food grade safe finish, right? And you have Watco, WATCO, WATCO. You have your butcher block finish, WATCO butcher block finish. You have cutting board oil, just regular mineral oil. I like a mineral oil beeswax mix. There's a place here in Ocala that there's a name for bee people who tend bees. It starts with an A. Anyhow, there's a local honey, beehive and everything in Ocala that where you can buy, like honey, you can buy beeswax and stuff like that, and also the farmers markets and stuff like that. Anyhow, online, whatever. But I like a beeswax mineral oil mix. Melt some beeswax, add in some mineral oil, and then let it kind of re-solidify, and it makes a great kind of wipe on or rub on finish and everything. But there's also from a company, a couple of companies, but cutting board oil. So it's pretty much kind of, I think they have taken, now I've never used the cutting board oil, but I always use either butcher block finish, now butcher block finish is a little bit of a harder finish. So it's a built up finish. You'll build it up and it kind of creates a little bit of a harder finish. And then close to the grain, soak into the grain is like your mineral oil beeswax and all. Well, cutting board oil also same thing, soaks into the grain and everything. And you can get that on directly from their website, Walrus Oil. You can get it from toolstoday.com. Tools Today is a great place to kind of get, router bits and stuff like that. They're pretty cool. They mostly carry like a Mana brand when it comes to router bits and stuff. There's also on Amazon butcher block oil. I actually have to pull it up. Give me a second. I got to pull it up. It is Howard's. Let me see here. So you've got your cutting board oil from Howard. It's a food safe mineral oil, and then they also now Howard brands also sells a butcher block conditioner too, and oil and everything. But there is another cutting board oil that is see if I can get it here. Another cutting board oil, about the same price, made in the USA, Melville cutting board oil, right? To maintain, protect, and finish, right? So it's a food safe wipe on finish, and so it's great for salad bowls, butcher block, charcuterie boards, all that wonderful jazz and everything. But I've never tried that one. Have no affiliation with them whatsoever, whatever. But so they're out there. So long story short is I'm a fan of close to the grain finishes. Now, let's forget inlays for a minute and forget food safe finishes and all that stuff. For me, I'm not a finish guy where I use polyurethanes and stuff like. I'm a lacquer dude, right? I like CAD acrylic lacquer. I like water white, CAB acrylic lacquer, and from Sherman-Williams. I use my HPLV sprayer. In a pinch, I use a rattle can lacquer, right? For lacquer finishes. But when it comes to, wipe-on finishes and stuff like that, I'll dabble a little bit sometimes on outdoor projects with a wipe-on poly, which is basically kind of like, polyurethane, and I believe it's like mineral spirits or something, I don't know. It's weakened somehow to make it a wipe-on, but brush-on poly and I don't get along at all. I'm not a finisher. I don't brush-on poly. I don't, it's too much for me. Anyhow, but now when it comes to cutting boards, coasters, or bowls, or spoons and forks and knives, or whatever, all those woodworking projects that need to be food safe and all. Natural mineral oil and beeswax. I have a Tupperware tub of mineral oil that I just drop the boards into and let them soak. Soak it up and everything. But the salad bowl finish, Watco, W-A-T-C-O, butcher block finish. That's kind of a built-up finish. That's a really nice finish. It kind of creates that a little bit of a harder, more durable finish. There's all kinds of finishes out there and everything, but no matter what you choose and everything. I kind of and talking about the food safe finish, I'm kind of leading the inlays are mostly all for like cutting boards and things like that. And it's not true. It's not true at all. But that's kind of where it leads to, because that's what you see a lot and everything. But I like Watco's their wipe-on finishes. Hold on now. It is, not tongue oil. Jesus, Laney. I'm losing my woodworking mind here. Hold on a second. Watco wipe. Danish oil. Jeez Louise, Danish oil. Which is, we're not talking food safe now, but the Danish oil. I love a wipe on the Watco Danish oils, the natural. Sometimes if I want to darken up things or something, I like the golden or the walnut. I think it's they have a few different tones, but I like the natural. But for me now, for a finish, that's a great finish, wipe on finish for me. And everything, whatever your preference is, just make sure if you are doing cutting boards and all that you're food safe, right? And again, I'm not a finish expert and all that, so I don't want to get into big debates about it and all that stuff. But after it fully cures, most all finishes are safe, right? Once all the gases and everything are evaporated of it. But I don't want to have a discussion about it. I'm not a finish guy, so don't make any comments in the comment section. I won't reply because I don't I don't want to talk about it, and all that stuff. But boiled linseed oil, thank you, Ed. Yeah, boiled linseed oil is a good option as well too. And how do you get the Amazon Get link? You can either have a business account or become an Amazon affiliate, where you market and sell their products and get a commission, right? So I have a business account, but I'm also an Amazon affiliate, right? So you sign up under the Amazon Associates, AmazonAssociates.com, right. And then just you got to make aware of, like, for instance, I'll give you a quick example. Let's go to my website. So like on my website, right? If you went up to tools on the tools and stuff that, that I use and recommend, and router bits and things like that, these links and stuff, you need to make sure that you let them know, like somewhere there has to be, how I get paid, right? And you need to, make them aware that the links that they use, you may receive a small commission, and sometimes you may not. I've had people buy stuff and click, and I don't get a commission on it. It's just, it doesn't pay enough, or it doesn't, you have to have a certain amount of commission, or they don't pay out, kind of thing. But so you have to have it. You have to just claim that, hey, if you use the link, I might get a small commission on that recommendation, kind of thing, right? And so, that's one of the requirements of becoming being a Amazon associate, but then it allows you to generate, your own custom links, so that they know who to credit, that kind of thing, and all that. Yeah. So there you go. All right. So now, ladies and gentlemen, it's 5 minutes to 10 o'clock. We're going to wrap it up. I hope there's something in this 2 hours, something that you might be able to take away, or something that you might at least have a little bit of information that you might try an inlay if you've never done one before. If you've never done a VCarve inlay, or an inlay period, or whatever, on a project, give it a go. It could be anything. So imagine, if you will, and this is for educational purposes only, but go to appropriate sites and buy vectors and all that stuff, Etsy and everything. But let's say I wanted to do an inlay of a rose, right? And so I'm going to, I'll probably, someone who's done some nice work or whatever, I'll probably, purchase that vector, download it, and, be able to use it and all that stuff. So it's part of doing business, right? So a $2 investment on, however much I'm going to make on every cutting board that I sell with that rose in it is worth it, kind of thing. But just for educational purposes, let's go to free patterns here, and let's see here. Save that free pattern. It's as easy as this. So let's move the tiger out of the way for a minute. Let's pretend that this is my cutting board here. Let's flip over to the mill and get rid of this one too. Move that one out of the way for a moment. All right. So let's say that I come in, got my design set up, rock and roll, rinse and repeat, right? So import the image. I will trace that image. I will turn off that image, and now I have the vector, right? So I will size that vector up appropriately, whatever I wanted for the particular project, that kind of thing, whatever it may be. And let's get it centered. And then I'm going to come in and create my toolpath. In this case, I'll use the new VCarve Inlay toolpath. So this is literally start to finish, right? Kind of thing. So found a graphic, trace the graphic, centered and sized the graphic. Now I'm going to create the toolpath for the graphic. So in this case, in this one, I'm going to go with a 1/4 inch. We'll do a 1/4 inch. So my pocket depth is going to be 0.25. My glue gap is going to be 0.02. My surface gap, again, for me is going to be 1/16 of an inch, 0.06, and 0.625. Like I said, Ryan at Cutting It Close, he likes a 0.1 surface gap, because I don't know, he just likes that space. He likes that 0.1. It's great for him, that kind of thing. But he likes that 0.1. It can be whatever you want it to be, right? I'm going to use my 30-degree V-bit with my 1/8 inch end mill. My mel plug is going to go to that new school board. I'm going to use the sheet limits as the boundary, and I'm going to go past the boundary by, 1/16 of an inch. And at this point, I would have a mel board created, right? I would create that sheet, which we do. We have a 10 1/4 by 10 1/4 sheet. But I'm going to calculate that toolpath. First of all, you got to select the vectors. Then I'm going to calculate that toolpath. And in this case, notice that it didn't give me any warning on that. It liked the 1/4 inch number. It liked it. It liked it. All right, so we carve this. Let's just for right now, let's go back to just a regular maple board here with no color. Right. So that's my female pocket, and of course, when I do inlay, it's my that inlay is going to look like that. But whatever species, my contrast, make sure it's a contrasting color for that really stands out kind of thing. But that's it. So that's my female, and then on my other board, it's got my male already created, the male part right there. So the toolpaths are already created. I can preview that I'm in the 2D view, but it's carving in the 3D view. Trust the process. I'll switch over to it in a second. So it cuts out that male part, right? And then glue, clamp, and carve. Now, here's the deal. I really want to talk to you really quickly. If you use your CNC to surface off the waste of the male, right? Typically, I'm zeroing out on 0 is the top of my waste board, right? 0 is the top of the waste board. The 0 is the top of the material surface. I mean, not waste board. Ignore what I just said there. So I want to make sure that my surfacing bit does not come down to 0 to cut across that surface or anything, or below 0, right? I don't want it cutting into my wood null. I want it to be cutting in the air, slightly and everything. So in the toolpath, when I'm running that surface cut and I'm milling away that excess material, it could be a profile cut. I like a profile cutting in one direction, or you could do a pocket cut if you want to go back and forth. That's up to you, however you want to do. But I can't come in here and I can't type in negative 0.02 or negative this or negative that, I can't make it cut shallower, right? I can only make it cut into the wood. I can't tell it that I want to actually cut in this tool, but I can't make it cut in the air, right? So my cut depth is going to be 0 on the toolpath, right? And I'm going to, choose the, your surfacing bit, whatever it may be. And you're going to be, cutting on the lines. I usually have lines drawn and everything. And you're going to calculate that toolpath. Now, let's pretend just for a quick second that that's a lie. Let's pretend for just a quick second that this is my CNC machine table, and then this is my waste board, and this is my project board. Okay? And let's pretend that this is my surfacing bit. Let's get that lined up and welded together. All right, let's pretend that this is my surfacing bit. And let's pretend that all right, node editing. I want to kind of make things look consistent. I want to select on node editing, I'm going to select this node. That's going to be my reference node. Then I'm going to select these two nodes, hold the shift key down, and I'm going to hit the letter Y up and down to hit Y to bring those down so they're in line with that first node that I selected, right? Just reference. All right, let's pretend that that's my mel part, right? And let's go back out of node editing mode here. And let's take this off a different layer so we got black lines so everybody can see well. Let's change that color just for right now back to black. Okay. So now my end mill, like if I create a toolpath to cut to 0, right, and I zero out on the top of the board, my end mill would be, if I left it at 0, you know, at the machine, it's going to be cutting here, right, down to the surface of the board. And I don't want to do that. You know, I want to leave a little bit of proudness, and I want to sand, you know, to that final finish and everything. And some people will leave a little proudness and they'll, you know, run it through plants. They'll do all kinds of crazy stuff. But so at the CNC, in Vectric, I'm going to set a 0 cut depth with my surface bit on the line. I'm going to draw my vectors, you know, and create my surfacing toolpath with a 0 cut, right? And at the CNC machine, I'm going to come over and I'm going to zero out my bit, come down and touch off and zero out on the top of my material, Z0. And then I'm going to raise my bit whatever you're comfortable with. Now, for me, you know, 10 thousandths, point, you know, 01, 0.005, whatever you want. But I'm going to raise the bit a fraction, just a little bit. I don't want to have to do a whole lot of sanding, right? So just a little bit. And so in my controller software, I'm going to type in my, you know, my MDI box, my manual data input box, Z 0.01 or 0.005 or whatever. And I'm going to hit enter and I'm going to have the Z raise up that much. And then I'm going to re-zero out the Z at that point. So now that is 0 for the machine. So now when I run the toolpath and everything, the toolpath is going to cut, and it's going to cut, you know, down to 0, that small amount above the material, and it's going to mill away all of that material, you know, and everything, leaving just a small amount of material. So all of this stuff gets milled away. And let's pretend for a minute all that gets milled away. That router bit comes in and you know, comes in and it's all gone and all. And when I'm finished, you know, cutting that all that waste away and everything, and I'd probably make passes, you know, don't try to, you know, it depends on your bit, you know, don't try to take it all in one big chunk, depending on how thick your material was, right? You know, but when that's all said and done, now my mill is just slightly proud of my surface, and then I'm going to take it over and sand it, you know, nice and beautifully flush it up, and then I'll put my finish on it and that kind of stuff, right? So I can't, in the Vectric toolpath, I can't tell it to cut in the air, that few thousandths of an inch, right? I can't do that. But at my machine, you know, I can set a 0 cut depth, and then when I zero out, I can move my bit up, you know, that fraction, you know, 10 thousandths, 0.005, whatever number you want, just above, where it's just above the surface, and then re-zero the Z there, and then run the toolpath, right? And it's going to cut it down to that level. Now, and I can make pass steps, right? You know, I can make pass steps, or, you know, passes and all that and everything, whatever it is, but it's really going to be kind of one pass. But if I had to shallow it up, I would raise up and make it 0 higher up. So I'm taking off, you know, more of the tops of that material, and then come down, you know, re-zero if I have to take another layer off, if you will. But I'm going to be, when I finish, if I have to run, you know, this 2 or 3 times or whatever, if I'm not doing it in one fell sweep, right, whatever. But when I finish, I'm going to be just a few thousandths above the surface for that final cut, right? And then, you know, I'm going to mill all that excess waste away. That's what I would recommend, right? Or you can take it over to a bandsaw, or you can take it to a scroll saw, whatever, depending on the size of the inlay and all that stuff. Whatever, you can do a hand saw, right? You know, whatever gets that waste, that male waste cut off, right? And whatever it does and everything. But at the CNC, the setup, there, you're pretty much, this is what you're doing. Okay, you're zeroing out on your surface, you're raising up just a small amount, re-zeroing there, and that's zero now for the machine. So when you run that toolpath, that zero toolpath, it's taking off that material. But if your waste is real thick, then zero out just below that surface, you know, and that way it takes off that first part, and then zero out a little bit lower, take out that next part, and then just that few thousandths above your board, finish it off if you have to take it in chunks, right? All right. Everybody, y'all have a wonderful evening. Thanks for that last, 10 minutes of time with me to talk about, creating that surfacing toolpath. But just, just a few that your excess gone, just leaving you enough that you can sand that inlay flat and create that beautiful finish, nice smooth finish. You don't want the router bit doing that, because then it could damage something or whatever, I don't know. But sand to a nice finish, put your butcher block wool on, or your wipe on varnish, or whatever it is, right, that you're doing, and rinse and repeat, ladies and gentlemen. Give that a try. 2 hours to talk about a VCarve inlay is a long time when it's really, only takes 15 seconds to, kind of talk about it and do it. But hopefully I've over-explained it enough to where, I can give that a try. If you've never tried it before, I'd love to see you give it a try. And if you do give it a try, and on our next class you happen to come in and pop in on the chat, give a shout out. Say, hey, man, I tried an inlay, and let me know how it went. All right. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Thanks for tonight. Thanks for every night that you're with me. And I hope you enjoyed this discussion. All right, everybody. Have a great evening. Thank you, Joe. Thanks, Brooks. Thanks, everybody.